All right, Georgia fans, time to ask some tough questions. All right, now let me say right off the beginning here, because I already know some of the comments I'm going to get. Kirby Smart has my full support, 100%, 110%. I couldn't support Kirby any more than I do. I don't want Kirby fired. I don't think he's on the hot seat. I don't think he should be on the hot seat. None of these ridiculous questions. I completely and fully support Kirby Smart. You can question things about a person. You can even have some complaints about certain things and still be in support of those things. There's a long way between wanting someone fired and wanting some improvement. And I think most reasonable people would agree with that. So right off the jump, let me just say, I don't think Kirby Smart should be fired. I don't think he should be on the hot seat. I don't think he's going to be fired. I don't think he's going to be fired no matter what happens this year or next year. None of that. I'm fully behind him. With that being said, it's okay to criticize somebody if you think they deserve it. And I'm not saying he does deserve it. I'm putting the question out there. I'm asking, is it time to start blaming Kirby Smart, or at least wondering out loud, what is the deal with the quarterback situation at the University of Georgia? And, you know, it's in the limelight right now for obvious reasons. But this is not a new issue. This is not a new dilemma, problem, conundrum, whatever you want to call it, at the University of Georgia under Kirby Smart. I want to recap a few things here about Kirby's time at UGA. Okay, he's been there since 2016. That's 4 seasons, going into the 5th season now. Here's a list of quarterbacks that Kirby Smart has had at his disposal during his small amount of time at the University of Georgia. 5-star Jacob Eason. 5-star Justin Fields. 5-star JT Daniels. Highly rated 4-star Jake Fromm. Highly rated 4-star DeJuan Mathis. Highly rated 4-star Carson Beck. That is 6 elite quarterback recruits that Kirby Smart has had on his roster in the limited amount of time he's been at UGA. Now, before we dive into sort of each of those players, I want to focus on a couple in particular, and those are the 3 that were there basically his first 3 to 4 years. I'm talking Eason, Fields, Fromm. Eason got the start in 16. He was really the only option outside of Grayson Lambert, which means there was no other option. Did Eason look great in 2016? No, he did not. Did he look like he had some potential in 2016? Yes, he did. 2017, we signed Fromm. He comes in. Eason gets to start week 1 against App State and gets hurt, Eason. Fromm comes in. The rest is history as far as that story goes. Fromm took over. Eason never started another game, transferred out at the end of the season to Washington. Did Eason look better at Washington than he did at Georgia? Yes. Was he drafted? Yes, in the 2nd round. Fromm went on to start for 2 more years, of course, 18 and 19. Came out the same year as Eason into the NFL draft, where he was drafted in the 5th round. In between that period of time, Justin Fields enrolls at UGA in the class of 2018. Now, going back to Jacob Eason, he was the number 1 rated prospect recruit in America for 2016. Justin Fields was the number 1 or number 2 behind Trevor Lawrence, depending on where you look, rated quarterback prospect for 2018. That's 2 number 1 quarterbacks in America that Kirby Smart had access to and chose Jake Fromm over both. Eason, like we mentioned, went on to Washington, clearly looked better at Washington than he looked at UGA, and ended up being drafted in the same draft as Fromm, 3 rounds higher. Justin Fields did not look good at UGA. There's no sugarcoating that, and I'm a Justin Fields believer. He didn't look good. He transfers out after never really given an opportunity to start, transfers to Ohio State, where he puts up over 4,000 yards, over 40 touchdowns, completes 80% of his passes, and was invited to New York for the Heisman ceremony. He'll be back this year. I expect similar numbers from Justin Fields this year. Jake Fromm, in his 3 years at the University of Georgia, was given the starting position over both Jacob Eason and Justin Fields. In those 3 years, he never had a season over 2,800 yards. Now, we can debate and argue until the cows come home whether that's a product of the style of offense Georgia was running, or whether the style of offense Georgia running was dictated by the limitations of its quarterback, Jake Fromm. 2,800 yards total by a quarterback in today's football is not a lot. It's not a lot. 27, 28 touchdowns a year. I think 32 was the most he had one year. 4 or 5 interceptions a year. That's a good ratio. It's not the 40, the 45, or the 50 that the elite game-changing playmaking QBs are putting up. And this is not a bash Fromm video. That's not what it is. I consider Fromm to be an elite level prospect at the quarterback position coming out of high school. The point is not whether Fromm is any good or not. The point is, how did he look at Georgia? Was Fromm any better the day he left Georgia than the day he got there? What was Fromm's development like at the University of Georgia? Did he get better his sophomore year than he was his freshman year? Was he better his junior year than he was his sophomore year? The answer to those questions is no. Jake Fromm was the exact same quarterback when he left UGA as he was when he got there. He didn't improve in any area that I was able to see over the 3 years that he was there. Meanwhile, again, Eason goes to Washington and clearly looks better than he ever looked at the University of Georgia and gets drafted 3 rounds ahead of Fromm in the same draft. Fields, who was passed over by Kirby Smart in lieu of Jake Fromm, goes on to Ohio State where he has a Heisman campaign season. Again, over 40 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards, completed 80-something% of his passes. Just a ridiculous season. Had it not been for the all-time season that Joe Burrow had, Justin Fields would have been holding the Heisman Trophy last year, and there's a chance he'll get a chance to go after that again this year. Fromm leaves. You look at this year. You look around. You bring in Jamie Newman. That didn't work out. You bring in JT Daniels. We'll see. DeJuan Mathis, highly rated 4-star, very highly rated, very highly recruited. Everybody wanted him. Everybody wanted all of these quarterbacks that ended up at the University of Georgia. Everybody wanted Justin Fields. Everybody wanted Jacob Eason. Everybody wanted Jake Fromm. He was an Alabama commit. Everybody wanted these guys. Everybody wanted DeJuan Mathis. He was committed to Michigan State at one time. He was committed to Ohio State at one time, before decommitting and committing to UGA. Sat out last year with the health issues. Comes in this year. And again, I was somebody who wanted to see Mathis play well. This isn't a situation where I've just had it in for Mathis or whatever. I have been a Mathis fan. His story is an amazing one. It would have been an amazing story for him to come out and play well in his first time out against Arkansas. That didn't happen. He looked bad. He looked unprepared. He looked lost. He did not look like an elite level quarterback. So you bring Stetson Bennett in. Stetson Bennett played okay. Stetson Bennett was a walk-on. He's 5'9". He had 0 scholarship offers out of high school. I'm not saying that to knock Stetson Bennett. If it weren't for Stetson Bennett, we may be 0-1 right now. So, I owe Stetson Bennett a debt of gratitude. It's not really the point of this video to even talk about Stetson Bennett. And now we've got JT Daniels cleared to play, another 5-star. And we've got Carson Beck sitting on the bench, a highly rated 4-star that everyone wanted, who's a true freshman. Let's leave Carson Beck aside for the purposes of this conversation because it's not likely he'll get much playing time this year, barring some significant injury to somebody. I'm of the belief here, and I want to reiterate what I said at the top. I support Kirby Smart 100%, okay? He's a young coach. He has not been a head coach but for 4 seasons, this being his 5th. He's an elite defensive mind. No one doubts that. and he's an A+++++ recruiter. I'm also of the mindset that in college football, recruiting is at least 75% of the battle. The more talented team is going to win most of the time, regardless of the in-game coaching or preparation or whatever. Talent is going to win out in college football most of the time. Alabama's going to beat Vandy most of the time. Georgia's going to beat Kentucky most of the time. Ohio State is going to beat Indiana most of the time. Why? Because they have way better players. With that being said, when you match up with a team that is close to you talent-wise, that is where the coaching really shows or doesn't show. Back to the quarterback situation. JT Daniels is cleared to play this week. I don't know if he'll start. I don't know if he'll play. I don't think Kirby knows. Kirby famously said about the quarterback situation back in 2018 when someone asked him about Fromm and Fields. They asked him what his plan was for those two QBs, and he famously said, the plan is, there is no plan. One of the only truthful moments in Kirby Smart's head coaching career, that's not a knock on Kirby. Coaches don't like giving out any information of any kind. So most of what coaches say is babble, dribble, and coach speak that means nothing. When Kirby Smart looked in the camera and said the plan is there is no plan, he meant that. It's clear. It's been clear to me that there is obviously no plan for the quarterback situation at the University of Georgia. That continues to be the case today. It's just as true now as it was when he originally said it back in 2018. Whenever JT Daniels plays, whether it's this week, next week, whatever, if he does not look amazing, I mean lights out, oh my God, this is what we've been waiting for type amazing, I honestly don't know what to do or say anymore about a Kirby Smart offense if that's the case. If JT Daniels is not just blow your socks off, great. I'm on record that I have questions about whether he will be or not based on an entire season's worth of Power 5 football that he played in the Pac-12. But what choice do I have but to support JT Daniels if that's who we send out there? Any player Georgia sends out at any position has 150% of my support until they give me a reason not to in a UGA uniform. So clearly I hope if JT Daniels goes out there, he sets the world on fire. If he doesn't, if he ends up being another quarterback who looks bad at UGA, another quarterback who, for whatever reason, when they put a Georgia helmet on, just appears lost, Who do we blame? I refuse to believe that any team in a 4-year period can have the number of talented quarterbacks that Kirby has had and all of them be bad. That is borderline impossible. Again, Jacob Eason, 5-star. Justin Fields, 5-star. JT Daniels, 5-star. Carson Beck, 4-star. Jake Fromm, 4-star. DeJuan Mathis, 4-star. That is 3 5-stars and 3 highly rated 4-stars that Kirby Smart has had on his team in a 5-year period. There's no other team in America, not a single one, that has had that number of elite quarterback recruits on their team in a 5-year period. There's not one. Now, there's plenty of teams who have had quarterbacks that have ended up being great in the last 4 or 5 years. Clemson with Trevor Lawrence, Alabama with Tua, Oklahoma with whatever quarterback they trot out there not named Spencer Rattler. The list goes on. But there is not a single team anywhere in America who has had six of the most highly rated and recruited quarterback prospects in America over a 4 or 5 year period. There's not a single one that's had that many. It's impossible that they're all bad. And the 2 that we have had a chance to see play somewhere else have both proved that they are not bad. That in fact, they are both better than the quarterback that was chosen by Kirby to start at UGA. in Fromm. And again, this isn't a bash Fromm. It's not Fromm's fault he was chosen to start over Fields or Eason. But the point is, Eason went to Washington and looked fine. Justin Fields went to Ohio State and looked fine. They both looked average and below average and honestly bad at times at UGA. Eason comes out, drafted in the second round. The same draft, Fromm goes in the fifth round. So that's not an opinion. If it's an opinion, it's an opinion that's shared by all 32 teams in the NFL. Eason is better than Fromm. Anybody with a set of working eyes can see that Fields is better than Fromm. Fields put up 2 seasons worth of numbers in 1 season versus Jake Fromm's numbers. Again, 2,700 yards a year is not getting it done in modern college football. It's just not. I refuse to believe that there can be this number of quarterbacks come in and out of UGA in a 4 or 5 year period that are just bad. So what is happening? Who's to blame? Whose fault is it? Well, it was the coordinator's fault for years. You blame Chaney for 2 years, then he's gone. You bring Coley in. Well, no, it's Coley's fault. You get rid of Coley, now you bring Monken in. Now, it's only been 1 game, and I'm not throwing in the towel. I'm not suggesting that things can't be turned around this season. I'm a huge Georgia fan. Clearly, I'm hoping they can be. I'm hoping JT Daniels is the guy. I'm asking the question, what if he's not? What if he's not? Then what? We wait till next year when we bring in Brock Vandagriff, a true freshman, who will be a true freshman next year, even if he stays committed to UGA. It can't be that every single quarterback that comes through UGA is just not any good. It can't be that 3 different offensive coordinators working with 6 different highly rated quarterback prospects. It can't be that all 3 of those coordinators screwed it up. I don't know what's going on with the offense at Georgia. I don't have any idea. We averaged 19 points a game last year against SEC teams. That's absolutely insane. When you look at the talent on Georgia's team, they're the most talented team in America, top to bottom. That's not my opinion. That's the 24/7 Sports Team Composite Talent Index. They average out the last 4 recruiting classes, and they come up with a talent index of every team's roster. Georgia's at the top of that list this year. They've been at or near the top of that list every year for the last 3 or 4 years. The one obvious and glaring deficiency on Georgia's team over the last 3 or 4 seasons has been quarterback play. Even Fromm, who's been the most steady and consistent quarterback to come through UGA during the Kirby Smart era, was never amazing. You never watched a game and went, my God, look at Fromm. That is, look at his arm. Look at the play he just made. It just didn't happen. He's not a game-changing, dynamic, playmaking quarterback. The best you can hope for from a quarterback like Jake Fromm is that he didn't lose the game for you, and most of the time, he didn't. There are some exceptions. The South Carolina game from last year with the 4 turnovers, the 2 second halves against Bama, the game at LSU in 2018, the game at Auburn in 2017. I mean, there are a few where he played bad, but generally speaking, you knew what you were going to get with Fromm. And what you were going to get was about 170 total yards, about a 65% completion percentage, a touchdown or 2, and no interceptions. That's not going to lose you a lot of games. That's not going to win you a lot of games either. Georgia won a lot of games while Fromm was the quarterback. They didn't win many games because Fromm was the quarterback. And that's what's missing at UGA. That's what's been missing at UGA. It's not a lack of wide receivers. It's not a lack of running back talent. It's not an inferior offensive line. It's not an inferior defense. Quarterback has been the least talented position at UGA in terms of on-field production every single year for the last 4 years. And based off of what we saw week 1 of this year, it looks like we're in store for more of the same. And so the question that I'm asking in this video is, who's to blame? If it's not Chaney anymore, if it's not Coley to blame anymore, seems odd that you would blame Monken. I mean, you can't just keep blaming the OCs. You can't just... All those quarterbacks are not bad. All those OCs are not bad. At some point, you have to wonder, Is Kirby doing something with this offense that is just keeping it stuck in neutral? I don't know. I'm seriously asking a question. I know a lot of you are used to watching these videos where I rant and rave and hoot and holler and yell and scream and the sky is falling and the world is ending. I'm legitimately asking, again, from somebody who supports Kirby 150%. I love Kirby Smart. I love what he's done for the University of Georgia. And I love the position he has our football team in, competing at the end of every year for division and conference titles and possible playoff spots. I love that. You can support everything good that someone does and still question the negative. And I do consider Kirby's handling of the quarterback situation at UGA a huge negative. When you're staring at a situation where the most talented team in America, top to bottom in terms of roster talent, has to try to walk on quarterback out in the second quarter of a game at the worst SEC team in the league, Arkansas, to save the day, you have royally screwed something up somewhere. The quarterback situation at UGA has been criminally mismanaged, in my opinion. And I'm asking the question to you, who's to blame? Who's to blame? Somebody's got to answer for it, I believe. You cannot keep changing coordinators every year. You cannot keep recruiting 5-star and highly rated 4-star recruits and trying to tell everybody they just can't run our offense. They're just not smart enough. They can't learn the playbook. None of that is true. None of that is true. Something is happening to the quarterbacks at the University of Georgia. I don't know what it is. Who's to blame?